Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with serial entrepreneur, architect, and builder Lance Cayko. He is the co-founder of wildly successful architecture and construction firms in northern Colorado. His career in architecture, engineering, and construction spans over 2 decades and includes several design awards. He's got a great story. Enjoy this interview.
Great to speak with you. Thanks for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet. So before we get into your life as an entrepreneur, an architect, a builder, all of these things that make up who you are, you know, looking at the calendar now, I think it brings back PTSD because of 2020. Being here in March 3 years ago, it all began. How did you survive the pandemic, and how has it changed the way that you both live your life and conduct business now?
Professionally, we survived the pandemic by being lucky enough to be on sort of the bright, you know, the green grass on the right side of the fence. That's the way I should say it. You know, because the Federal Reserve printed so much money during the pandemic with all the PPP loans and the unemployment, you know, no questions asked, insurance, stuff like that. And then the tech sector completely went through the roof at that point, and now obviously you're seeing it pop and everything. Architecture-wise, because people were at home much more often, our industry actually flourished. It was the opposite of what we expected. So now because of the higher interest rates and the very low housing stock that's available for people to buy, and you know now the tech sector's the bubble's bursting, which is you know where we operate out of in Boulder County. We're kind of the Silicon Valley of the Midwest, honestly. You know, Twitter's here, Facebook's here, Google's here in Boulder. And with layoffs coming in that industry, now we're actually seeing the downturn now. So honestly, professionally wise, during the pandemic, it was like gangbusters. I mean, we were commanding the highest fees we ever had. But so now what we've pivoted to professionally in order to hopefully survive is when we started our architecture firm in 2009, I started it by being laid off by a crappy architecture firm, by being laid off from architects who were more artists than they were business folks. And the way they were more artists more than business folks is they were catering their services towards, you know, this very small segment of society, sort of the 1 to 0.1% of society. And the problem and they were doing only upper higher middle class homes. And the problem with that is well, if you're trying to run a business that's here to stay long term, if you're trying to not lay people off, that's where the diversity is actually your strength, is if you are setting up your business to have multiple legs to stand on in case one of them falls. So because of those, I'm really thankful for those lessons, and I'm thankful that I was laid off in that kind of way. And that's what we've tried to build at S9 Productions. So, you know, we don't just do one kind of typology, and we don't of architecture, and we don't tailor our services towards a certain clientele only. We actually like to think that we serve the 3%. So, you know, anywhere from lower middle class all the way up into some of the most richest, wealthiest people around. We do single-family homes, multifamily, residential, commercial, industrial. And then we also sell a couple products. And we teach at the University of Colorado Boulder. So we sell software products for architects to help level up their firm. It's called RevitRocketShip.com. And then we also, after becoming and taking the leap of being architects as builders and real estate developers, we created a course called ArchitectsGuide2.com. And that allows and helps architects take the leap into being also builders. Because our goal with that and our theory with that, and it's panning out right now in real time for us, to hopefully really crush it during this downturn and not have to lay anybody off, and not have to start over with new staff, so we maintain that staff who has our systems down pat and knows how we want to operate to try to keep us going with this very high level of customer service that we have that's culminated in 75 five-star reviews on Google Businesses. The pitch we give to architects is we say, look, you design the building. If you see a downturn coming, a lot of these projects are either cash finance. People are just, they've already taken out the home line of equity and they're just sitting on the cash. Or some of these people just have the cash to be able to buy it. Or it's finance, the money set aside, the bank is ready to, have the contractor pull the first draw, and then your cash flow, for the rest of the year or however long the construction project takes. if you're an architect, you're probably working on any project between 3 months and a year. Okay. That's one side source of income, right? Let's say you're coming up on that month 12. If you're ready to take that leap and extend the cash flow and the work through a downturn, becoming a builder in addition to an architect is our strategy at the moment to try to keep that diversity going.
To get a very clear handle and a more simplified version of exactly what you do on a daily basis, I'm going to hypothetically put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. One of the kids looks up at you and asks you, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
If I'm speaking to that, I say I'm scribbling on paper, and then I'm taking that piece of paper and we're banging a bunch of sticks together to make something.
What did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream when you grew up?
A professional fisherman.
So do you fish?
I do. I am a professional fisherman now. So that
really?
your original question, that's in addition to all the other stuff I do. So you're back to your original question about, and I'll tie it in, about how did I survive the pandemic? Personally, for me, it was I had to find. My wife was, she took the whole cake and was really scared about the whole thing because we have one of our children. We have 4 children. Basically has asthma, and rightly so. I mean, that's a pretty nasty disease for somebody who already has some pre-existing conditions. So as a person who's on the go constantly, I had to find my outlet of what to do, outside of work to try to have that sort of balance. And I picked up fishing again. When I was growing up, that was, my mother tells my wife this all the time, anybody who's, meeting me and her for the first time, that, oh yeah, when Lance was in 2nd and 3rd grade, it was so cute. He wrote what he wanted to be, and it was a professional fisherman. And so I picked that back up during COVID and then have just kind of went full steam ahead with it. I've created a Newsbreak contributor profile where I post some short little clips, and that ended up monetizing it. So I basically get paid for the content I create through my fishing adventures.
Talk to me a little bit about your beginnings, all the seeds that were put into you to become who you are, kind of where you were born and raised and how those seeds became who you are today.
Sure. I grew up in Northwest North Dakota in a very rural community with about only 500 people that lived there. Went to school with only about 20 students. It was a full K through 12 school, very small with only a couple hundred students in total. And it's basically on an Indian reservation too, so I'm part Native American. And growing up in that culture and in that environment, there's not a lot of opportunities economically, or for that matter, educationally or anything like that. And my mom and dad were not entrepreneurs. God bless them. They taught me a hard work ethic, good Protestant work ethic, good moral values. Raised me as a traditional Catholic and stuff like that. However, their pursuit was not to try to be able to not worry about money by chasing after money and being entrepreneurs. So I grew up hungry enough, I mean that literally and metaphorically, to sort of have a chip on my shoulder in that regard, and I hated it. One of my favorites, my favorite rapper of all time is Kanye West. And what my favorite line of his is that having money isn't everything, but not having it is. And that's kind of been my mantra. So I don't consider myself this big, huge, giant, greedy capitalist because I'm also a philanthropist too. But that is absolutely what drives me every day as an entrepreneur. I never wanted my kids to have those sort of negative feelings when it came to just needing basic stuff like clothes or school supplies or anything like that. I wanted them to just feel comfortable around it, and then also understand what separates people from, being, rich dad versus poor dad. Last summer I had him read that book by Robert Kiyosaki and write a report for me. And so that's kind of my humble beginnings when I was, I grew up between a cattle ranch and a sugar beet and durum farm. And I tried, when I was 13, I'm 40 now, I tried irrigating those sugar beets with my dad. That was kind of my first job. Dad and I didn't really get along too well. And then on top of that, if you've ever been to Northwest North Dakota in the dead of summer, the mosquitoes will literally try to pick you up and carry you away. So I just hated the work. And I said, hi, Dad, I can't do this anymore. no offense, we don't get along. This isn't working. He said, well, you got to do something. I'm not going to raise kids, that don't have a strong work ethic and don't have some kind of tangible skills in life that they could fall back on. So I said, no problem. How about I'll call Bruce? Bruce is his best friend. Bruce is a general contractor. I called up Bruce when I got home that night, and I said, hey, Bruce, I can't do this anymore working with Dad. Do you have anything I could do for you? And he said, sure, you could be my gopher. You can go for this. You can go for that. When you're done going for stuff, you can get up on the roof and you can learn how to roof with us. I have a big contract. We're doing 80 roofs this summer. We're going to get up at 4 or 5 a.m. We're going to have the roof torn off by 10 a.m. We're going to have it put back on by 2 p.m. He goes, are you in? I said, yes. It was $7.25 an hour, and I was the best darn gopher he ever had. So I did the go for this, go for that, got up on the roof, learned how to lay a roof down, learned how to do roofing, and I was hooked in the construction industry from there. I just loved the camaraderie with the guys. I loved the hard work, even though it was hard work, it was dirty, all that kind of stuff. And stuff started to click for me. One of the early business lessons that Bruce gave me right away is he just flat out told me, he goes, you know how much I pay you? And I said, of course, yeah, $7.25 an hour. And he goes, you know how much I bill you out? And he did the multiplier of like 3x. And he goes, after insurance, then I get paid for every hour you work. And it clicked for me. It sounds rudimentary to probably all the business folks talking, but when you grow up in a family doesn't have a business acumen, you need somebody to say that to you for you to really understand how this all works. So I love that part of it. And then I just fell in love with the building industry in general. So what I would do then is every summer I would go work for a different general contractor and I would learn a different trade of construction. So I did that all the way up until I was 18 and found myself as a senior in high school going, again, with not a lot of choice. And for me, like as far as academics go, with a class of 20 in a school that small, you don't really have electives. You're just kind of forced into, look, here's what you got to do. And for me, that's sort of prison, and it really hurt me academically because I just wasn't into school. So I kind of became this sort of lower B-level student. And then at the same time, I was like, yeah, I probably should at least go to some kind of school. And I go, well, I love construction. Why don't I go to trade school and learn how to be a general contractor? So I applied to North Dakota State College of Science in Wapaton, got accepted there, and entered their program for building. It was called Building Construction Technology, and they basically teach you how to be a Class B general contractor. And this is where I started to excel in school. Became a 4.0 student, figured out how to monetize going to school, because if you're a Native American and you apply yourself in this country still, you have crazy amount of opportunities. So all of a sudden I was getting paid to go to school. I loved going to school. We get to my second year there, my last semester, capstone project is to build a house. And I found myself looking at these blueprints as a person who is slightly on the spectrum and just needs the absolute truth and understanding about even the smallest things in life in order to function. I was like, why did the architects draw it this way? And I was like, maybe I should be an architect too. I love school suddenly. North Dakota State is right up the road, 70 miles from here, full 4-year university. So I applied there to go to get into architecture school. I got in the preliminary, which means first there's a pool of 350 students that get accepted in your freshman year, and then it's competitive, and they dwindle it down to 50 selections, and then you're fully in the program. So I worked as hard as I've ever had in any kind of academic situation, got into the 50, continued that acceleration, met my best friend, now my business partner, Al Gore there. We graduated number 1 and number 2 in our class, and then had, big bright eyes and bushy tails, thinking everything's going to go our way, right? Because we graduated top of class. 2008 hits. We both got the last kind of internships that were available. He went to New York City and worked for Daniel Libeskind, world famous architect, who's done like the museum in Berlin, the Holocaust Museum, World Trade Center redesign. And then I went out to Boulder and worked for 2 regionally famous architects. And then 2009 hit, and then the crash really happened. So we got the rug pulled out from underneath us. And then that's the push came to shove. And at that point I had 2 children. It was like, I'm not going back to North Dakota with the mosquitoes and the cold and all that. And so I put out some Craigslist ads. And this was back in the day when Craigslist was actually still workable and not so sleazy and all the good stuff. And I would outcompete, knowing that the writing is on the wall. Like, I knew the layoff was coming. I was like, I'm going to fall back on my handyman work. Like, at the end of the day, I know people are still going to be able to afford to, like, paint and redo stuff in their house, even if this recession is deep. And my prediction was right. And in a snarky kind of way, but it worked for me, is a lot of folks who are like handymen and in that industry and everything like that have some substance problems, communication problems, that sort of thing. So I thought, I'm going to be the opposite. So I would put even in the ads like young, handsome, smart, sober handyman available for hire, and I would target areas like Boulder that were probably least affected by the recession around here. And I was never been busier. So that's what kind of provided the backstop for me having to uproot my family again, move back to North Dakota from Colorado. And then Alex, at the same time, he went to grad school thinking, oh, this recession, maybe it'll last like a year. Joke was on us. I mean, we were just young and inexperienced and didn't realize that recessions can last multiple years and downturns and stuff like that. And he did go back for an additional master's degree, finish it. Obviously, the recession wasn't over. And by the time that happened, I had all this handyman work. I was kind of thriving again. I had a big catalog of CAD work to do from a company online. And then I managed to land on my own, again, laid off from that other firm, a custom single-family house to design architecture-wise, and then a clinic that I even brought back to the old firm that laid me off. And then Al calls me up, and he's like, hey, I graduated. I'm living with mom and dad again. I hate it. I can't do it. And you can imagine a young guy worked his butt off and got laid off and totally dejected, having to live with mom and dad again. I go, hey, well, how much money do you got? He goes, what do you ask? I'm like, well, the apartment right above me just opened up. I got a house for us to design. Got this clinic. Got a formula to get more work. Got all this CAD work. I go, come on down. It'll be an adventure. I go, I know we were going to start this business maybe 10 years from the point of graduation. So maybe around 2020, but maybe now is the time. So he came down and we starved for about 3 to 4 years. And then we landed these teaching gigs at University of Colorado Boulder, where we each co-taught a class. And by that time, we also had quite a bit more design work. And it sort of became this push come to shove. Oh, we're teaching at the University of Colorado Boulder. Well, that's going to take up time. We don't have time to execute the work. We need to hire people. And that's what started our expansion. So then from 2013 to 2023 now, we've grown our low six-figure firm into a thriving Colorado's top-rated architecture firm. We're up for the Best of Mile High Award this April for the best-rated Colorado architecture firm. And we have a staff of 7, and now we gross well over 7 figures every year. And then the other things that have happened since then is we started our podcast, Inside the Firm Podcast, 2017, where we tell everything. We tell this whole story even more detail to try to help other Gen Z, millennials, younger folks, hopefully give them that hope that capitalism is still good. Being a business owner is still good. And that you can still do it, and the American dream is still there. You just got to go out there and grab it. And then the 2 other companies that we started as a result of kind of stemming from the architecture firm is we are real estate developers. So we have F12 Productions, which is a company that we started. We bought a piece of land after we built some tiny houses for Subaru, bought a third of an acre, put on the builder's hat in addition to being the architect, also became builders with F14 Productions, our construction company, and now that firm is thriving as well and tracking to be well over 7 figures in terms of revenue. So that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
So at this point in your life, I guess just overall, who would you consider a hero or a role model for you?
Elon. Elon to me is the ultimate entrepreneur, and it goes even deeper than just the idea that Elon's here to make money. If you really pay attention to what he's doing, his goal and what his modus operandi really is like, I'm here to serve people with excellent products. That's what I'm after. I'm here to help humanity live better, be better, work better, drive better, go to space better, all of those sort of things. So like when I think about somebody that I look up to and cite often and read into and am tracking, it's somebody like Elon Musk.
If you could meet one person alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Kanye West.
Of all of the things that you've accomplished up to this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Ooh, that's a great question. What am I most proud of? Tell you what, I've got a senior. So I have 4 children. 2 are stepchildren, and 2 are my biological, obviously. And I was able to basically rescue my son last year when he was in a very, very bad place with drugs. And no matter how traditional or baseline we tried to raise him, I mean, teenagers at the end of the day, they're going to go down these paths, and because they are their own people. Like I think that's one thing that's been my biggest lesson as a parent now that has, adult level children is like, you can lead them to water. They might not drink, they might drink it, but at the end of the day, they're going to be people. And so I think the thing I'm most proud of is raising him and the other children to try to be people who are productive people in society, people that other people want to be around, and then ultimately they want to be around me at the end of the day as they become adults.
Everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, colleagues, clients, but you ultimately live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am a go-getter that almost never stops moving, and through my products, my profession, my services, and even my philanthropy, I am helping people do some of the similar things that, like my role model would be, the person I look up to, Elon Musk, is, if I'm designing something for somebody, if it's a house, the Marshall wildfire was pretty devastating to Colorado 2 years ago, made national news. A lot of people lost a lot of houses, and people came to us, you can imagine, extremely distraught. So doing stuff as simple as just improving people's homes through design that's more timeless, so where they're not knocking down walls later on, they're living a life of flourishing, then moving into, like, let's say we build it for them, we're building buildings that are long-lasting and improving people's lives. And then, over to my philanthropy, I have a nonprofit called Longmont Community Gardens, and it's a community garden, obviously, as the name says. And through that, I am there to try to help people. We have a lot of people that have never, ever grown anything in their whole lives, and that can completely change their whole outlook, just from a mental standpoint. But then also, obviously, they're producing their own local, fresh, organic food, and the food is always the fuel. So I just hope that I'm leaving a positive, lasting legacy. And that's the idea with the podcast, too, is if the internet is forever, I want my stories of positivity and perseverance and grit, professionally and personally, that are told on that podcast to live forever, so that other people can hopefully be influenced in a positive way by us.
So what has been one of the best client responses, fan letters you've ever gotten in your life?
The best client response I've gotten is for a house that we've named Eastwatch. And that client, when I originally spoke to him, I said, they said, well, are you going to go visit the site? And I go, of course. And now this has kind of been my running mantra for like these kind of houses. So we will get these very special clients that come to us with like an amazing raw piece of land that's in the foothills of Colorado. So the views are just incredible. The access to the sun is really good, stuff like that. And what I tell them is I go, and it's the truth now, because after going through this process with Noah and his wife with their house, is that like God chose me to be your architect. And so I am I am taking your project that seriously, knowing that this is going to be the house that you guys die in. And once we got to the end of the project, that client came out and basically said the same thing to me. He's like, I think you were right. He's like, I didn't know what to think about when you first said that, but now that we've lived in the house and you've been there, like, it was all providence. It was all meant to be, and you were chosen to do that. So I would say, from a client perspective, that's the most positive thing I've probably ever heard.
So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, Lance, and your business and anything revolving around your world, where's the best place to go?
I think the best place would be to go to f9productions.com to learn about our business, our primary business. You can sign up for our newsletter when we keep in touch that way. There's a little contact form at the bottom. If you want to keep up with us more on a week-to-week basis or even a daily basis, go over to Inside the Firm podcast and find whatever you listen to podcasts on. We're on all the major platforms. Subscribe. We're on YouTube as well. And if you'd like to link in with me, just search Lance, Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko, and I will link in with you.
Beautiful, Lance. This has been a wonderful story. Thank you for being so open and detailed about everything. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Subscribe to us there. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.